Hi, I'm Liselle Sambury, a soon-to-be traditionally published author, and this month it's June. It's my debut month, which means my debut novel, Blood Like Magic, is going to be coming out very, very soon, and so I wanted to continue my trend of doing some Blood Like Magic content. Last week I did a video all about Blood Like Magic, so like the whole journey of going from my inspiration to like the finalized form of the book, and you can check out that video over here. And so this week I thought what I would do is I would make a recipe from the book. So I'm gonna cook a recipe that exists in the book, and I'm also at the same time gonna share some fun behind the scenes facts. So last week's video was all about the book, but like this is like little behind the scenes nuggets, spoiler free, of course, as always. So yeah, I'm gonna do that today. I'm excited to share this recipe with you. Some of what I'm making today I have already made in the past, and some I've never made, so we'll see how that goes. But a quick rundown, if you didn't know, my debut, Blood Like Magic, is about a family of Black witches living in a near-future Toronto, and in particular, 16-year-old Voya Thomas, who is forced to choose between killing her first love or losing her family's magic forever. So today, what are we gonna make? So we're gonna make sorrel, which is a drink. It's like a spiced, iced hibiscus tea is how I might describe it to like non-Caribbean folk. And we're also gonna make fried bake, which is like regular bake is like a coconut based bread, and it's like flat, so it's like this. And then fried bake is like a fried version of it, essentially. So we're gonna start with the sorrel because I have to heat it. That's the tea part. And then I must also cool it down. So it's better to make that first. What I have for that is the spices. So there's some cloves. These are the cloves. And then there's also some allspice berries. These are the berries. I'm gonna link a recipe in the description below. So if you are wanting to make this yourself, I will link a recipe. I am doing this very off the cuff because I make this all the time. So I'm pretty used to like doing my own thing. So if what I'm doing doesn't directly match a recipe, it's fine. Usually I would also have cinnamon sticks, but my cinnamon sticks have gone missing and I can't find them, so there's not going to be any cinnamon this time, which is like, I don't know how different it's going to taste, but I just couldn't find the cinnamon sticks. I can't get out to get cinnamon sticks right now, so I'm just leaving it. The thing I will say for sorrel is you cannot use ground spices. You need to use whole spices, because if you use ground spices, you're just gonna have a gritty texture. It's gonna suck. It'll be terrible. And here's the actual sorrel itself. So you pretty much have to get this from like, I would say a West Indian store. I found that like Asian grocery stores will have sorrel as well. This is where I got this from. I got it from an Asian grocery store in Toronto. I will find the name of it and I will link it down below so that you can go there. But I get it dried. You can use it fresh, but I've never used it fresh. My grandpa has always made it dried, and so I use it dried. And so it's like a hibiscus type flower, and I use 1 bag in a recipe because I found that just works enough. And then I like to add citrus, so I will add these little, whatever I have basically. If I have an orange, I'll use an orange, but right now I just have like clementines, so I'll use these clementines. And I just like give them a really rough chop, and I'll squeeze them, and I'll just put like the whole thing in, because yeah, I'll just put the whole thing in. And then the last ingredient, oh my god, is this guy. So just sugar. If you look at the recipe, I'm sure they'll have a specific amount of sugar they want you to put in. I basically just do it to taste. I'll chat a bit about why sorrel and how that relates to the book and all that. So if you didn't know, I'm Canadian Trinidadian, or Trinidadian Canadian. That makes sense. That is the correct one. And so sorrel was something that my grandpa always made around Christmas time, and he would like make it and like put it in pop bottles, like basically like take pop bottles and collect them over the year, and then he would pour it in there, and we'd all drink that at Christmas time, and he'd like send us home with a bottle, which I really liked. And so I had to put it in the book. I put a lot of Trinidadian foods and like drinks and that sort of thing in the book, and so this was one that was like really special to me. And it was only in like the last couple years that I finally learned to make it myself, because my grandpa had stopped making it, and I was like, and so I started making it myself. And so I, of course, had to put it into the book. First tidbit, a lot of stuff from my family is in Blood Like Magic. So a lot of the foods that I grew up eating, like things like pylori and macaroni pie and stewed chicken and all that sort of thing, those show up in the book. That's a lot of the foods that are in there, and my main character is really into cooking, and so there's even more opportunity for food. And another tidbit, I actually grew up in a house. There was 8 of us. So it was me and my mom and my grandpa and my step grandma and her brother and his kids and another cousin. And so I had a lot of people in my house when I grew up, and coincidentally, anyway, as a result of, I made Voya's family really big. So there's 11 of them living in the house. So there's my main character, Voya. There's 3 of her cousins, just like I had 3 cousins. There's her mom, there's her aunt, her aunt's husband, or ex-husband actually, and her dad and her dad's new wife, and their kid, and then her. Did I miss anyone? Oh, her grandma, of course. So there's 11 of them living in that house, which like I didn't think about that much when I put it in the book, because I just like loved the idea of having a big family. Like I had a big family. But like later on, people were like, oh my gosh, how do you juggle so many characters? And I was like, oh yeah, I guess there are a lot of characters, but they all are so necessary to the book. Yeah, except here's my other tidbit before I get going and I like start actually boiling the water and doing more stuff. There were actually 12 family members originally. So my wonderful agent, she was like, do we need all of the family members? She were like, feel like maybe we could cut someone. I'm gonna suggest Chase. And originally I was like, cut Chase? I don't want to cut Chase. But it was very much a suggestion. I didn't have to cut Chase. But since she had mentioned it, I was like, let me think about it. And the more I read in the book, so Chase used to be, let me explain, because Chase isn't in the book, but at this point the book is out, so probably you haven't read it yet to know. But Chase was another one of Voya, my main character's cousins. So she originally had 4 cousins. And so Chase, Keisha, and Case were all siblings. So 3 of them were siblings. And then there was one other cousin that was from a different family member. Yeah, I had him in there. And when I read, I thought, let me just try and see what I would need to cut if I cut him out. And the only thing I needed to cut was a chapter. And that's when I realized, okay, he's not bringing anything to the table. And so I ended up cutting Chase out. And I didn't miss him. I didn't notice that he was gone, really. I feel bad, R.I.P. Chase, but he couldn't make it into the final. And fun fact, if you have read the book, if you like got it early or something. I don't know if you read the book or if you're just watching this video in the future. Keisha's gift is, because all the witches have gifts as well as their magic. And her gift is sensing discomfort. So knowing when people are uncomfortable. And that used to be Chase's gift. And when I cut him, I gave his gift to her because I thought it was better. Her original gift was like adding something special to things. Like she would like make her nails like move and things like that with like galaxy patterns. And it was just so vague and I just didn't think it was good. And so, but I really, really loved Chase's gift. So I took it and I gave it to her and it was so much better. Like, I think Keisha having that gift works perfectly because she is snarky, she like says what she feels, and she's not afraid to tell everyone that it's an uncomfortable situation, even if it's obvious. So that's another tidbit. And now I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I'm gonna boil the water for this so we can make it. And we're back. I love how through the power of like video magic, you'll just jump around and not realize that I've spent time doing things. Anyway, the water is boiling. That's happening. And now I'm going to start on the fried bake. So as I talked about before, bake is like a coconut based sort of bread. I realized when I was looking at recipes for fried bake, because I've never made it myself. This is something my grandpa, it'll become clear that my grandpa was like the chef in the family. So he would make fried bake for us like very rarely. Like it was a very special treat for him to make it for us. And so I assumed that it was the same process as like a regular bake. And so it would be like a dough with coconut milk, which is how I wrote it in the book. When I looked up the recipes, I realized most people just use water. So if you're a Caribbean person and you read that in the book and you're like, why is she using coconut milk? It's just the way that things are. But some people do use coconut milk. And so I'm going to use it in this recipe because that's how my main character Voya makes it in the book. I will say she uses a fresh coconut. I'm not using a fresh coconut. I bought a fresh coconut once. And the amount of struggle trying to open it, I could not deal with doing that again. So I'm just using canned coconut milk. Sorry to that. And I will also link the recipe for this below. So I'm going to start getting the flour and all that in the bowl. I'm not going to say anything right now because I need to count how much I'm putting in. And I'm not a good talker and counter. 4. Perfect. Yes, 4. 4 half cups equals 2 cups. This is why I said I couldn't talk while I do it. And in here it's like baking powder and sugar, and I actually will put a little bit of salt. I'm using salted butter so that I didn't want to put too much salt in, but it's actually not that much butter, so I'll put that in and I'll go ahead and add that. So I'm going to talk about the original title. So I avoided saying the original title of Blood Like Magic when I first announced it because I didn't want people to get that in their heads. But as like a fun fact tidbit, I can share it now. So it was originally called Voya Calling. So because the calling is the ceremony that witches go through in order to get their magic. And that's the ceremony that Voya fails, which is not a spoiler because it says on the jacket copy that she fails. So that's why I named it that, because Voya is her name and the calling is the thing that she does. And like, that's what the whole book is about. And I thought it would be like, it also, like, to me, spoke to, like, this being her experience and, like, that sort of thing. And so that's why I had named it Voya Calling. But when we decided to, you know, when I was on submission. Anyway, at some point, the book was purchased, and I realized that that was not going to be a good title. For one, a lot of people, or I don't know if a lot of people, like, but a good amount of people were mistakenly calling it Voya's Calling with like a possessive, and I hated that. I hated that so much. Like, Voya's Calling like sounded so cheesy and terrible, whereas Voya Calling to me had like a lot of presence, and so I absolutely abhorred when people did that. And I thought it was so painful. And so for one, I didn't want people doing that, hearing about the book. But also I just realized that that title meant nothing to anyone who hadn't already read the book, because they wouldn't have known what a calling was. They wouldn't have realized necessarily that Voya was the main character. When they were talking about it to people, like, they wouldn't understand what it was about. And so I already was like very prepared to change the title before my publisher even was like, yeah, we should change the title, because I was very cognizant of that. Oh, okay, I'm gonna add coconut milk. So they basically like they basically eyeball it. So you're like supposed to just like mix it, and it kind of comes together. And of course now my water is boiling enough that I need to put stuff in it and can't be mixing. Okay, I'm gonna break from mixing so I can put the ingredients in the, I don't know, is something gonna happen if I break from mixing? Okay, I'm just gonna keep mixing. Anyway, so that was why the title changed. Just like I realized that that wasn't a good title for the book, essentially, given everything. And Blood Like Magic is a lot better because it lets people know that the book is about magic. So it's a lot more useful in that way. Did any other characters change? A tidbit. So some character names changed. So in my original version, because as I talked about, I had Chase, I also had the uncle. His name is Uncle Cathius. And then at the time, Alex, who is one of Voya's cousins, her original name, not dead name. She's a trans character. This is not a dead name. This is what she was named. Because it was a unisex name, is Chris. So she was Chris, but then it was Chris and Chase and Uncle Cathius, and it was too many C names. That was another recommendation by my agent. So I changed her name to Alex. And then of course I cut Chase so that it didn't really matter as much. But you know, I still did it. I was trying not to have too many C names. So yeah, that's what happened. So, it took several drafts for me to like remember that I had changed her name. It was like a real struggle in the beginning. And anytime I talked about the book, I would accidentally say what was her old name because I was just so used to that. But now I've gotten very used to the new name and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's Alex. Okay, I think this might be ready to like roll out onto the counter. And because I'm gonna roll it out onto the counter, I'm gonna wash my hands off. Here we go. So now I'm gonna put all the stuff in for the sorrel. So first things first, the sorrel itself. Usually I would do this on the fire, but like the lighting over my stove is really bad. So instead of subjecting you to it, I'm just gonna do it over here. Okay. So there we go. I throw the whole pack in. So that's that. And then our spices. And then I squeeze the oranges. or these are clementines, but whatever. I squeeze them and I just drop them right in. Because all of this is gonna get strained out anyway, so I think the zest adds its own sort of flavor, so that's why I just end up dropping it in. And I really like this because it ends up looking like very much like a witch's brew, which is very appealing to me. And then I'll just give it a stir. You don't need to put it back on the fire because it's hot now. You can kind of just let it sit and steep. So that's what I'm gonna do. Anyway, now we're back to the dough. So I'm going to put some flour down so I can continue to knead it. But yeah, so that's a character that changed, Alex. And then I have some, because it's set in Toronto where I grew up, and what I consider to be my hometown. Maybe this is a Liselle fun fact, but I wasn't actually born in Toronto. I was born in Lloydminster, Saskatchewan, but I grew up in Toronto and I consider Toronto to be my hometown, even though I was not born there. I was not born at Mount Sinai like everybody else, though I did put in a tidbit about Voya's family all being born at Mount Sinai because I think it's funny because lots of people in Toronto are born at that hospital, and that hospital actually like is in the book, not just in that reference, but also because someone has to go there. So ominous for you. But yeah, there's all sorts of Toronto locations. There's some locations that are kind of like, I don't want to say secret, but they're kind of like more Easter egg type locations, and that I say they're something else, but they're actually not. I don't know how to explain that. But anyway, tidbit / fun fact. So the New Gene building, New Gene is the genetics company that comes up with the matchmaking program that Voya ends up enrolling in to try and find her first love so that she can kill them. So yeah, she ends up enrolling in that program. And that building is actually the OCAD building in Toronto. So it's the Ontario College of Arts and Design. And so because I made this a very STEM-based future, in the future, unfortunately, OCAD has closed down because university is not super viable for people that don't have a lot of money. And when people go to university, it's because a company has sponsored them to go. And most companies aren't sponsoring artists, sadly. So it closes down. But why I chose OCAD, not because I went to OCAD, but because it's right next to the AGO, which is the Art Gallery of Ontario. And I actually was on the AGO Youth Council for 2 years. So when I was in high school, I needed volunteer hours, and I decided that I would apply to be on the Arts Council. So it's really cool. Like, as a teenager, like, that was so awesome. I was so happy that I had that experience. But you basically like work on like fun projects with different local artists, and they get put in the AGO. I also participated in the AGO tenure program, which was where we learned how to do video production, which is why I ended up doing a YouTube, because I really wanted to get back into video production. But we learned how to do that. And then our videos were showcased in the AGO. I had my work in the Art Gallery of Ontario several times. So that was kind of fun. So that's why I ended up putting it in, because it was just like a big deal to me. And that area was always meant a lot to me, because when I would finish volunteering, I would walk all the way up. Oh, I'm blanking on the street now. McCall. I would walk all the way up McCall because my mom used to do adult ballet classes. And so then I would walk all the way up, and I would go meet her at her adult ballet classes, and we would drive home together because we lived in Etobicoke, which is also another thing, where my main character's family lives is very, very close to where I grew up. And where I was living in Toronto when I was living in Toronto. So yeah, that's kind of fun also. But yeah, that was just an area I really loved. The short story I wrote that was published in the short story anthology through my university, it's called Street Fight, and it was set on that street. So I've always been very obsessed with it. Is this enough of this dough? I honestly can't tell if I've kneaded it enough or if I need to like do it more. Usually what I do is I put stuff in my KitchenAid. I usually don't actually knead things by hand, but in all the videos I watched, everybody talked about how like it doesn't come out right if you do it in the KitchenAid, that you really need to knead it by hand. So this is actually, I think this is my first time actually kneading something by hand because I truly never do it. I always let my KitchenAid do the work. So if you're like noticing me slightly huffing and puffing, it's because I'm kneading this and it's like more work, you know? I think this is good. I'm gonna bring us back to the sorrel and I'm gonna taste it. Just to see. Seems like it's steeped enough. So when you taste sorrel without sugar, it's so sour. It's super, super sour. So you do have to add quite a bit of sugar. This is why I only use 1 pack of sorrel, because if you use any more than 1 pack, like it makes it even more sour. And the more sour it is, the more sugar you have to add to it. So I'm just gonna eyeball the sugar. You may be like, oh my God, when you see me adding the sugar, but you do need a lot. And funny, my family, because I made them my sorrel, and a lot of them didn't like it because they said it wasn't sweet enough. Because I don't make it ultra sweet because of the amount of sugar you have to add. Whereas when my grandpa makes it, he makes it more like a syrup. But anyway. Yeah, I know you're watching this and you're like, whoa, but like, you need a lot. Where's my spoon? Here we go. To do another taste. Yes, I didn't wash the spoon because I'm the only person who drinks this in my house. My boyfriend doesn't drink it. Yeah, that's quite good. I'm gonna leave it to steep more. Now I'm gonna make a so in the book, Voya makes a compound herb butter, which is like you make a butter and then you like put it in plastic wrap and you roll it and then you like freeze it into like a block and then you like slice it and then you put that slice onto the thing. I don't know if I feel like doing the whole roll compound thing, but I don't know. I probably should. I should. Okay, I will. I will do the compound herb butter thing. So it's a herb butter. It also has mango in it. Will this taste good? I don't know. And in the book, her grandma is very skeptical. She pulls it off. Will I pull it off? I guess we'll see. So just go ahead and I got some parsley flakes. She uses fresh herbs. I didn't have any fresh herbs. You know how it is. So I'm just gonna parsley flake it. I think that's pretty good. And then I have some like blended mango. I don't know that I'll use all of it. It might be too much, but let's see how this goes. I've done my best attempt at like mashing this butter. Yeah, it doesn't look great, but I do have faith that it won't be terrible. Maybe that would be too much mango. Oh well, I'm already going for it. In the book, like a big component is this genetic matchmaking thing. So the whole thing of Voya uses this genetic matchmaking service to find who will be her first love, because she hasn't been in love with anyone before. You know, she works with her family on their beauty supply business. She like just finished up school. In the future, things work differently. She is 16, but she's just finished up school. I hate writing about school, so I made it happen for myself because I hate writing about school. So yeah, and she just like hasn't had time. Like, she's had crushes, but she hasn't really had time to try and date, and so she hasn't fallen in love with anyone. So she's like, aha, this matchmaking service will help me find someone. And it doesn't really work out for her because she gets matched with someone who has essentially humiliated her. And she's like, oh, that's the person that's like I'm supposed to be with. But she doesn't really have time to find someone else because she's got a time limit going on. So I wanted to do genetic matchmaking because I think it's so fun. I just think it's a really fun like idea and process. I'm getting this plastic wrap so I can do this herb butter roll up. We'll see how successful this is. So I just really like the idea of genetic matchmaking. In this future, like, it was adapted several times. So the first time that I did the genetic matchmaking thing, I set it up so that they were forced to go on dates. So they were made to go on these dates so that I could force Voya and Luke together. And when I did my edits with Sion Ashleman, the suggestion was that like the dates, there weren't quite enough of them and it wasn't quite working. So I edited that. And so there were more dates and it was like more intensive, and they like did this whole like date checkup at the end. This doesn't look super appetizing, but I think it'll be okay. They did this whole date check-in thing at the end. And so that was like a big thing of it. And then when I did edits with my agent, she made a very legitimate suggestion in that she was like, in the future, would that be how that worked? Because it kind of seemed to her that it was like a little bit old-fashioned in a way. I'm trying to make it into a log that I can potentially cut. So I really agreed with that. And I was trying to think of like what would actually be realistic. That actually looks like pretty good. I adapted it and I switched it so that they didn't have to go on dates anymore. And so that's the version that you'll read in the final copy. They don't go on dates. And it ended up helping a lot because when they were forced to go on dates, it felt very passive, like Voya was just going on them. Whereas when I took away the forced dates, she was forced to pursue Luke and to figure out how to get him to go on dates with her and like get to know her because he doesn't want anything to do with her. And so that ended up being for the best, and I really like that. So yeah, the genetic matchmaking program actually changed several times for me to make that work, but I'm really happy with it. I just think like matchmaking stuff is so fun, like where people are like forced, or not forced together, but like, you know, people are told this is the person that you're meant for, even if they don't really feel that way or they don't really see how that works. So yeah, I thought that was really fun. That's why I did that genetic matchmaking. So my herb butter is in the freezer, and now I gotta go ahead with the bake. Okay, now I'm gonna get back to the fried bake. It doesn't really seem like it's risen to me. But they said to just give it 10 minutes to relax. I don't think it actually rises. And whenever they do it, it seems like it hasn't actually risen in any way. But now I got a portion. So I'm supposed to get 6 out of this. 6 or 9? 9. So how am I supposed to... 1. So 9 what is each one supposed to be 4.5? I'm just gonna do 8. Even 8 seems like a lot, but I'm gonna do 8. Doesn't seem big enough, but the recipe says this makes 18, and so I halved it because I didn't need 18. Okay, there you go. So I'm supposed to roll these all into their own little separate balls, basically, and like give the top a nice smooth type finish. So I'll be doing that. So another tidbit, the beginning of Blood Like Magic has basically stayed the same. Some I've added more information into the first chapter, but the actual like structure of it has pretty much remained the same. And so the way it opens is Voya, my main character, is in this bath of blood. And I that was one of the first images, I think it was the first image that came into my mind when I thought of writing Blood Like Magic, was this girl lounging in this bath of blood, and like, why is she doing that, and what does that mean, and what is going to happen from there. Basically, yeah. I'm a very, like, the way my ideas come, I do often get things like that. Like, I'll, just think of an idea or an image, and that's how things come to me. And so that was very much how Blood Like Magic came to me. And so, yeah, so that beginning has basically stayed exactly the same. She's always lounging in the bath of blood. I did have like one freak out where I'd gotten some feedback where the person was like really grossed out by it. And then I panicked and I was like, what am I going to do if I have to change this opening, blah, 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 blah. And then I ended up talking to my CPs and they were like, no, that's a great opening. Nothing is wrong with it. You should keep it. Don't worry about it. And I ended up keeping it because it really just feels iconic to the book. I'll also like pop in here the little mock cover I made for NaNoWriMo for it if you want to see that. Because that was like, yeah, that's the little mock cover I made. The actual cover is much better and definitely, I think, a little bit more on brand for urban fantasy. I think mine was a little too horror. But yeah, that image stayed and I'm really happy with it. And I think it's one of those things where like, if like within the first few pages, people will know if the book is for them or not. Because if you see the bath of blood and you're immediately like, oh my God, cannot handle, then like probably not the book for you. So that's, that's kind of how I think of it now. But yeah, that goes to show, sometimes you get feedback that you take and sometimes you get feedback and you're very much like, no, that's not what my story is. And you don't go with it. So yeah. One of the other characters that changed a lot from the original to the final. I have a character called Rowan Huang, and in the original version of the book, first of all, she's like 50 years older than she is in the book. So she was like significantly older because I had this whole subplot thing where Voya ran away. So she basically like freaked out about doing the task and just like straight up ran away from home. And so then Rowan was a family friend that owned a restaurant. And so she owned a restaurant in Chinatown and Voya ran away to like hang out with her and like help her in the restaurant. And like just shirk all of her responsibilities. And I don't even remember really why I cut it. I just think it didn't fit, or like the running away didn't make sense to me. I don't even think anyone said anything to me about it. I just like cut it on my own. And so then Rowan's character changed. And so Rowan, in the final version, is the matriarch, which is like the leader of the Huang family. And they own like a storefront in Chinatown. And then she also has like a secret, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like jazz. What is it? Oh, like a speakeasy, like a secret, like speakeasy, like jazz lounge thing, that she has, you know, on the back of the storefront. And she's like quite a bit younger. So she's like 25. I should probably know the ages of my own characters, but like, I can't remember if I made her 25 or 26, but she's like the youngest matriarch in her entire family's history, and she was like voted into power, and she's like very glamorous. She's always wearing like these really out there like dresses, and she's one of Voya's family's one of their biggest customers for their beauty supply business. And I really preferred the way that she developed. She's a much more interesting character. You know, and she's not like, I felt like there were too many elder like characters that like give Voya advice. Like it felt like there were too many of those, and I think that's why I ended up cutting that and like making her into this character. But I think she's a much better character now, so there you go. Okay, so I've made my little like loyas, they call them, or dumplings. They're kind of smooth. They're not enormously smooth, but they're kind of smooth. I feel like I maybe did it right. So I'm gonna cover them again now, and they're supposed to sit like that for another 10 minutes. So I'll see you in another 10 minutes. I'm back. I gave things a little bit more time because I didn't quite feel like the pieces had risen enough. I think when I did that first rise, I probably should have left it for longer. It's not that it's cold in my house, but it's not warm. So it's not the greatest like rising environment. And usually when I do stuff that's yeasted, the yeast is dissolved. And so it has like time to get dissolved and that sort of thing. Whereas the yeast in these is not dissolved. And I don't know if like that was a me thing, like if I should have made the milk warm. Does it say warm water? No, it just says water. So I don't know. Anyway, I'm gonna start rolling these out to prep for frying. I have talked some about like my family and like being inspired, and like that's why, you know, so much of like the recipes and that sort of thing comes through, and like why there's such a large family. And so I thought I would get into like, is anyone in my family represented in this book? And the answer is no. No one I know is represented in any of my books. Sometimes I'll take bits and pieces, like things that people have said, or like hobbies that family members have. You know, like in my third published book, Butcher Birds, the mom is like very entrepreneurial, and my mom is very entrepreneurial, but they are otherwise completely separate. And so I want to say that on the record. But yeah, nobody is represented. Neither of my grandmas, my step grandma or my biological grandma, is like the grandma in the book. She's her own character. But I will say, the character that is like, to me, kind of, if a little bit, it's not the same, but there's a certain type of representation, is Voya's younger sister. Eden is her half sister. And so around the time that, not the time that I was writing it, but like when I was doing editing and that sort of thing, my sister was born. I have a little baby half sister, and her name is Alina. And so do I like that there's an E name? Yes, because I think that's cute. And the little sister in the book is very lovable, and you know, in some ways I wouldn't say that isn't at all influenced by the fact that, you know, my baby half sister was born, and that, you know, had an impact on me, obviously. So that's the only thing that I'm like, if you want to say there's some sort of representation, the fact that Voya has a half sister, and that I also have a half sister, and they're both biracial. So, you know, that's kind of a related family thing. But otherwise, no one is represented. I'm very much not the sort of author that's going to put in people I know into books. And I think most authors don't do that. For one, there's like legal repercussions. And for two, I think that most people just like aren't that compelling to put like the whole of a person into a book. I think you take little inspiration pieces, and I would say that's true of me as well. Another tidbit that's kind of like fun fact. This is a bit of an Easter egg, but if you wouldn't know unless you like knew me really well anyway, but there are two of Voya's cousins. They actually have the same name. They're both named Keisha, but one goes by Keisha and one goes by Case. And the story behind that in the book is that the grandmother told Voya's aunt that Keishas are bad. And so she named them both Keisha to spite her, and they're twin girls. And so the story behind that is my mom actually wanted to name me Keisha, and my grandma said Keishas are bad. And so I was named Liselle instead. So I just have always thought that's kind of like a funny family story, and so that's how that ended up in the book. Other kind of funny real life to book instances, when I was doing edits on Blood Like Magic, my grandma, my biological grandma, I make these distinctions because I grew, like, my grandma that lived in Toronto with me is technically my step grandmother. Anyway, it's a whole thing. But anyway, she was visiting, and I was writing the scene where Voya's ancestor first appears. And the smell that I wanted to come with it was the smell of rotting sugarcane. But I've only eaten, like, good sugarcane. I've never had rotten sugarcane. And so I asked my grandma what it tasted like, or what it would smell like. And she said like vinegar. And I was like, oh, okay. And she said it immediately, like right off the bat, no hesitation. And so I was like, okay. And I put that in the book. And then because I live, you know, in a small town, at the grocery store, I happened to see some sugarcane. And I was like, oh my gosh, I like never see stuff like this around here. Though there's now like more ethnic options, but it's obviously not the same as a city like Toronto. But so I saw sugarcane and I bought it because I was feeling nostalgic and I wanted to eat sugarcane. So I bought it, and then I struggled bust so hard to cut it. But before I cut it, I had put it aside because I wasn't sure if it was ripe and I wanted it to get ripe. So I put it aside so that it could get ripe. And then I forgot about it. And I forgot about it for a long time. And then I decided, oh, now I should cut it. Like, I should cut it and eat it now. So I cut it. It was so difficult. Like, our knives were not sharp. When I've had sugarcane, my grandpa, again, he has cut it for us. So he cuts it up and he like chops it into little bite-sized pieces and puts it into a bowl. Now that I think back to it, like, we were so spoiled. But anyway, he would do that, and then we would eat it, and it'd be perfect. And I think he had a cutlass outside that he used, and that's what a cutlass is like a machete. It's a really big knife. And I think he cut it outside. I think that's why he could do it. I'm trying to use my kitchen knife, which is like not it. And then my boyfriend had to come and help me. But anyway, I go through this pane, I cut it, I pick up the piece, and it smells a little bit weird to me. But me, being me, decided I was going to eat it anyway. So I put it in my mouth and I chewed on it, and the juice that came out, when I tasted it, I thought, Grandma was right. It tasted exactly like vinegar. It was horrible. I spat it out, and it smelled like vinegar too, which I didn't, usually I don't have a great sense of smell, but I could smell it. And I was like, at least I know my description of my book is bang on. So I'm just coaxing it to the top now. And then after a bit, kind of flip it. Oop. Kind of flip it over. And then you see it starting to puff up. And then I give it another flip. And then this bit is where it really gets nice and puffy. Which is what you want, because it's supposed to have this big air pocket in the middle. And then I'll do another flip. Let this side get a little more puffy. And get my plate ready. Just check. Yeah, that's done. And then I put it right onto here. And we're done. So these are our fried bakes. I cut the herb butter, so I'm gonna go ahead and do my little plating now. So I think this is our warmest bake. And then we put a little circle of the herb butter on top. I wish it looked a little bit better, but because it was cold, it like needs a bit of time to melt, you know? It's doing it, it's just doing it a little slowly. I'm like, let me see if I can coax it. I know, this is what we're doing now because I'm trying to get it to melt. Let's just say that Voya had a much better presentation when she did. She would have done a better job than this. So just imagine that that's what happened. Okay? Let's just imagine that. And then I have my little ice glass here, and I'm going to go ahead and pour myself a glass of sorrel. I strain this. So you're gonna strain it at some point. I just decided to strain some of it. It's still not completely cool, but I wanted to strain some of it for this presentation. So there we go. There's the bake with the herb butter, and there's the sorrel, and now I guess I'll try it. So I love the steam. I don't know if you could see the steam rising on camera, but it's like so steamy. now we're taste testing. Okay.
It's editing, Liselle. So the whole time I give my review of how the fried bake tastes, I do it eating at the same time. So I'm just talking with my mouth wide open, like I have no home training. And so I decided to come in with this little interlude to tell you my thoughts. I did think it tasted good. I was surprised that the mango herb butter was like a really subtle flavor and actually worked with it. So I'm very happy about that. But it was a little yeasty, which I talk about later on.
Let's try the sorrel. I make this all the time, but I always make it with cinnamon, so we'll see. Yeah, it's still good. It's still good. Even without the cinnamon, so. Yeah, I'm very happy with that. So I'll put in the description, I'll put the links for how to make sorrel and links for how to make fried bake. Maybe you'll have better luck with their recipe, but yeah, I think my tip would be to use warm water or warm coconut milk just to help the yeast kind of melt in, because it does it, and then I feel like I'm tasting the yeast because it's just like existing in little bubbles in the dough. So that would be my suggestion if you're gonna make this. Thank you so much for being with me on this culinary journey. Blood Like Magic comes out June 15th to a bookstore near you. If you're in the US and Canada, you can get it at any bookstore. If you're in Canada, I will say if you order from Another Story Bookshop, which is a indie bookstore in Toronto, you'll also receive a signed book plate and a special tasseled bookmark while supplies last. So I'll put links below for that. They ship Canada wide and they have local delivery in Toronto. And otherwise, yeah, US and Canada, you can get it wherever books are sold. And if you are international, so you're outside the US and Canada, you can get it from Book Depository. And so I'll also have a link below for Book Depository if you want to look there. And if you have a local library, check it out there. Also, libraries are amazing. And that also supports the book. So like request from your library or get it from your library. And yeah, only if you want. I feel like I have to specify that. But yeah, only if you want and you're interested in the book. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. During June, I'm doing a lot of Blood Like Magic content because my book is coming out this month. But ordinarily I do like writing vlogs and like some advice videos about writing and publishing and all sorts of other types of videos for kind of demystifying the life of being an author. So you can check those out as well. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Bye.